Welcome to the Startup Leader Show, where you learn lessons from leading startup founders and executives. I'm your host for today, Lisa Dreher, and I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Chris Rafter. He is the COO at Inzata. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Lisa.
Absolutely. Maybe you can start by giving us just a little bit of background on yourself and Inzata.
Sure. Well, I've been in the tech industry for about 27 years and worked in more traditional companies prior to joining Inzata in 2016, which was right after the company started. So it was my first startup experience. I did have a data and analytics background and a technical background. I've been a CTO before and done some other things. So I was interested in in trying out the waters here, and an opportunity came along with a new company that had a very exciting product, but it was still very rough and in its early stages. We did some quick fundraising and got everything stood up, and here we are 6, almost 7 years later.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, so how has that been so far?
It's been very eye opening. I've learned a lot of things. A lot of things I went into it believing or thinking that are dramatically different, moving from a corporate environment, having worked for billion-dollar companies with $1 billion in revenue, and then going to a startup and literally having zero revenue and zero customers. There's a lot that's different, but it's been exhilarating. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been a great experience, and hopefully I can I can bring some of that perspective for people who might be considering stepping into those waters.
Great. So maybe we can start by having you just talk a little bit about what the biggest keys to your success have been so far.
Yeah, sure. There isn't any one single thing. I'd say really a very big one has been collecting information and data on anything and everything that we do, and making decisions based on the data, not on previous instincts or previous experience. And also learning when you're in a startup versus a normal sized corporation, you get a lot of advice. There's everyone and their brother wants to give you advice and tell you how to do things, and they all feel like they're experts. One of the biggest skills you got to develop early is learning how to solicit feedback from people instead of advice, because you're going to get lots of advice. A lot of it's going to be bad or inaccurate, and so you've got to watch that before you listen to it too much. And for us, the key to success has been being open to trying new things, failing quickly. We have a very high emphasis on velocity and speed inside of our company, and that's mirrored in our product and how it functions, but it's also mirrored in the way that we do things. In the corporate world, you take months to launch a website. We've had cases where we came up with an idea in the morning and had a website launched by the end of the day, and we're trying it out. Because have fun with it. You're a startup. No one knows who you are. No one cares. So if you do screw up or embarrass yourself, chances are very few people are going to notice, and the ones that do notice are probably none of them are going to care anyway. So take some of those chances to try new things, and you might find something really unique that works.
Oh yeah, so that is I think the most exciting and fun part about being in a startup. So when you think about data, you said, hey, look, we want to look at data, and being a big data analytics company, how do you figure out kind of what data to look at and how to actually leverage that to make decisions?
Well, I'd like to say we teach classes on this, and any good data analysis always starts with one thing: good questions. You have to know what questions you want to answer. If you want to analyze any data, whether it's on your finances or your corporation or your company, it's got to start with what questions are you trying to answer. All analytics that's out there seeks to answer questions. So the people that come up with the best questions are typically the ones that have the best experiences. So it makes sense to sit down for a moment and ask yourself, what are some of the questions that if I knew or had a signal on beforehand, that I could make better decisions with? Or what are some things that I've always wondered about my business, but I've never really been able to quantify or answer? Those are great starting points for a mental exercise to get you into that mindset. Then once you have the questions defined, now you have something to latch onto, and you can start developing troubleshooting and problem solving to answer those questions. So usually that's kind of how the process we like to follow is. We'll start with, gosh, I wish I knew what our abandon rate was on our website, or things like that, or who is coming to our website. Then we'll start asking questions, trying out different hypotheses about how can we find out what the answers are, and then use them and then make them part of our normal process, and then automate them, and then use them as part of our everyday decision making.
Wow, amazing. So, when you think back over the last few years, what would you say have been the most valuable business lessons that you've learned?
Well, a really big one that I learned is that, again, going piggybacking on that advice thing, there's a lot of things you can do in a startup. There's a lot of places you could spend money, get an office, get signs, get business cards, all kinds of things you can do. What I learned is that there is a very specific order to how those things need to get done. So, for example, learned about the concept early on of product market fit. What that means is that you have a minimally viable product that meets a need of a certain market segment. And there's certain things you will do that you shouldn't do before you have that, which is, for example, hire salespeople. Well, early on, I was told, you got to hire salespeople to go out and sell this thing so we can make money. Made sense, right? But until it took us almost 3 years to get to product market fit, meaning that we had refined the product to the point where the market actually wanted it and would use it. So hiring salespeople prior to that was a waste of money. The minute you do get product market fit, then you start seeing demand, and then it makes more sense to hire salespeople and start scaling up your marketing and other things like that. So there's definitely an order to things, and a lot of times people will tell you you should do it this way or do this first, and it's not always the best advice. So you got to be careful what you listen to.
Indeed. When you think about just how it's all played out, are there any types of things that you would do differently if you were to start over again?
Definitely. I would have probably listened to my training and my gut instincts early on, at least for it with some of the advice that I was given. I was told, we were told lots of things early on by investors and other angels and people that, thought that they meant well, and they were trying to tell us what they thought was the right thing. But this market has changed so quickly. I've learned way more from people that have failed than from people who've succeeded, because the ones who failed are going to be very, very transparent about what they would have done differently. So I always treasure the opportunity to talk to people who have both succeeded and failed, and I get a lot of value from both of those kinds of conversations. And one of the things I learned when it comes to software, and this is from someone who failed, he said, if you're going to make software, make sure it's something that people are going to use every single day. That is the stickiest kind of software. It's the most useful kind of software. Don't worry about prioritizing big headline features and things like that. First, focus on making it something that people will use and will want to use every single day. Then add the features on later. And that's proven to be some very sound advice.
Ah, very good. You've mentioned investors a couple of times. How do you kind of balance their input with, other sources, like you said, your gut and or actual data? How do you kind of balance that input from the investors?
Well, we were very fortunate in having some very, very supportive investors, meaning that they trusted us as the company leaders to guide the company, and didn't push too much on us. I've heard some horror stories of some other cases where the investors were a bit more hands on. So I think it's really important that you sit down and have that conversation with your investment team, and to figure out exactly what the roles are, and make sure that there's a good fit there, that you're going to be able to do what you want to accomplish there. Ultimately, they're the investors, so they make the decisions there. So, but you've got to have a good relationship with them. I found that communication and transparency are very much key there, to understand what their objectives are, and always make sure that you have their objectives in the back of your mind, so you're guiding the company in a direction that they're going to want to see it go.
Yeah. When you think about the last few years, like
Mhm.
you said, there's been a lot of changes and shifts and things like that. I think one of the things that we run into so often are just roadblocks along the way. What have you found are the most effective ways to, I guess, get through those roadblocks?
Uh, there's always going to be roadblocks. So, don't let anyone tell you there won't be. I mean, look at what we've gone through in the last couple of years with COVID and economic conditions. I mean, our European operations were even, we were concerned about the war in Ukraine there affecting them. So luckily that how it's all turned out. But yeah, there's always going to be roadblocks. The only thing you can do is just maintain a positive attitude and just really never give up. It's impossible for you to ultimately lose if you have that mindset to never, ever give up, no matter what happens. And so that's exactly how we went about these different setbacks. And like when for example when COVID hit, called the team together, and we tucked in a lot tighter. Even though we're all remote and home, we closed our office, but we were on the phone practically every day, all of us talking and just helping each other get through that. It's a small team, but we really grew a lot stronger during those types of periods. And you got to remember too, as a leader, everyone's watching you. Everyone's watching the way that you react or you react to different situations and circumstances. So you got to make sure that you're setting a good example, because you do very much influence the decisions that they make and their behavior by how you act and how they observe you.
Yeah, yeah. In Inzata focuses on data analytics.
Mhm.
How have you seen that market changing, either just within the shifts in the market or, just changes in the industry? What are you seeing?
Everything has changed. I mean, that's another reason why you have to be wary of the advice, because what worked 5 years ago in sales and things like that is completely different today. Like, we don't have, we've got to, that's one thing I've learned is that, a lot of what you learned in the past really may or may not apply. So you really have to go into it with a really critical mindset and use information and data on whether it's working or not to make sure it's leading you in the right direction. For example, companies I've worked with in the past, we'd have sales teams of well over 100 people, and they'd come to work in an office every day in a bullpen, right? And get on the phones and start selling. We tried that, it didn't work. We now do most of our sales with an offshore team that we've sourced from around the world, and they're just as effective through Zoom and on the phones and on video calls, doing demos and things like that. We're paying, our costs are much more favorable in that case, and we're also getting better quality, more dedicated people, better stability, less turnover and things like that. So you really do have to be willing to experiment and try different things, and you might find some things that'll work a lot better for you and put you in a better place.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit about the major use cases for Inzata?
Oh, sure. Inzata is a next generation data analytics platform. So it's designed to empower organizations, whether public or private sector, to be able to get into analytics by building a data warehouse in record time. We've developed AI that automatically models, cleans, and connects your data together into an integrated data model. And we can now promise or offer our customers the ability to build the data warehouse and get analytics and dashboards up and running in days versus the weeks and months that it would take with other platforms.
Wow, that's amazing. So, can you give us a couple of recent examples of programs or projects that you've worked on?
Yeah, sure. We've got customers spanning multiple industries on the commercial side. We also have a number of public sector customers, some very large school districts around the country, and they're using, every use case there is different. Some of them are using Inzata for student performance management, early warning intervention systems to be able to push information out to teacher desktops. We have other customers at the state government level that are using Inzata to report on state healthcare operations. We have another one that's using it for predictive modeling to create predictions around capital asset budgeting and capital asset aging and things like that. So a multitude. We even have one customer that is, and this is not a joke, where we have one customer that is a chain of Little Caesars restaurants in Iowa that is using Inzata to predict when Little Caesars corporate is going to release pretzel crust, because they do that several times a year. And apparently pretzel crust in Iowa is so popular that when they do that, they don't, this franchise chain doesn't have to advertise for customers, because the pretzel crust brings them in. So they asked for us to help them develop an algorithm using past information on when pretzel crust was released in the past. And we look at several commodity prices and things like that go into making pretzel crust. And they now have an AI predictive algorithm that tells them the likelihood that pretzel crust will be released by corporate on any given week. So it's a lot of fun to tackle these different business challenges and help people get more value out of the information that they already have, and be able to answer these much more esoteric questions.
Wow. Pretzel crust sounds really good. I've never had it, but I might have to try it the next time it's available.
Mhm.
Okay. So, kind of to wrap a bow around this, if you were to give founders one piece of business advice, what would that piece of advice be?
Um, well, number one, hire the best possible people you can afford, and be honest and transparent with them, and keep them happy, because they're going to be the ones that are going to make your business successful and make your customers happy as well. You can't have happy customers without happy employees first. And then also, I'm going to go with a couple here. So also forget everything about that, about how long things took in the real world if you came from a corporate environment. Like I said earlier, be willing to try things, go move as quickly as you possibly can, because the more things you try, the more failures you're going to have, which is okay. But if you recover from those quickly and you increase the amount of experimentation you're going to do, then ultimately you're going to increase your rate of success. So you're going to be able to try out different things. We tried probably more than 100 different marketing strategies. We figured out everything that doesn't work in marketing, like SEO and social media and stuff like that. And we finally settled on something that does work for us, and we've been able to scale the company 2-3x per year based on that. So you really have
Wow.
to be willing to kind of learn things and develop your own way of doing things that's going to work for you and your market and your products.
Ah, very good. So you think that 3 times factor was a unique thing to Inzata?
You mean the growth numbers?
Yes.
It doesn't need to be. I mean, it was
Well,
great.
I mean, not the 3 times, the
Oh.
approach though that you took to get there.
Yeah, it definitely was unique because we were told, we learned a lot of things that we were told would work, didn't work. Like we tried SEO, that didn't work. We tried Google ads, that didn't work really well for us either. We spent some money trying that out. We tried Facebook ads. Ultimately, we settled on a specific a specialized social media strategy that worked well for us. And, that's where we started to put more capital behind that. So you really do have to, what works for other companies, product companies, B2C companies is not necessarily going to work for a B2B. You have to really understand your market, the people that are going to be looking for your product, and then also how they buy. How they buy. The way people buy today is a lot different with all the information that's out there. There are tons of resources for people to be able to try things out. There are product-like growth models. There are websites like Software Advice that that compile reviews and things like that. So by the time the customer engages with you, they may already be 80% through the sales cycle. So you have to be able to very quickly understand where they are and what their needs are at that moment, and make sure you're nurturing them and making sure you're meeting their needs at every step along the way. And then you're going to give yourself the greatest chances of success there.
Ah, yeah. Well, what I heard out of that is experiment, go and figure out what works
That's
for
right.
your company.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, good. Okay, so I want to end with one last question, and that is, if you were to make one prediction about the future, what would it be?
Yeah, I thought about this one. I really think I think we're going to see the rate of change only increase. I mean, 3 or 4. Look at how much has changed in just the last 2.5 years with the pandemic and everything else that's going along. I really think we're going to see a change continuing to accelerate. None of us 3-4 years ago thought we'd all be working from home, or we see such a resounding shift in the way people work and the way people communicate with one another. But I think that's only going to continue. Hopefully it's not going to be due to another pandemic sweeping the world, but it'll be due to just the advancement of technology and the advancement in how, and new generations, their values and how they want to work. I think we're just going to continue to see things changing. So I think that the advice about not entirely looking to the past and experience, but also evaluating situation awareness about where things are right now, where they might be going, is going to become even more important.
Indeed. Okay, well, a great point to end on. How can people learn more about Inzata if they want to?
Oh, sure. Well, best way would be go to visit our website. We have a link to a number of different media items on there. That's www.inzata.com, Inzata. And there's some links to some other videos and other things that you can download and look at.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Chris. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.